This is the fear we use for what psychologists might call social anxiety or comparative anxiety. One of those dilemmas pertains to FOMO, or as it's known in full, fear of missing out. It means exactly what it sounds like. And of course, as a certified social media addict, I've done my fair bit of scrolling. Right, just off the top of my head, I've been on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I think from that I've experienced quite a bit of FOMO, so I know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to this phenomenon, whether you're just looking for a quick scroll or something more engaging, it is worth learning that FOMO isn't necessarily the same for everyone. And so without further ado, let's metaphorically open one of those social media apps as I uncover ways that FOMO affects our daily lives. When I was out there for the first time on the social media superhighway, living the connected lifestyle on my smartphone, the first confusing thing that I noticed is that notifications in social media apps, as it turns out everywhere else, insist upon grabbing our attention at different times to what they would in real life. Sarah, what do you mean by that? Well, here's how notifications work. We'll get into terminology later. In real life, the moment where I enter a social situation and speak to friends and ask them if they have any exciting plans is known as a normal interaction. When you enter the digital world, you press the app icon to stay connected, or swipe to see what's new, or tap to check your messages. You get my drift? In the digital realm, I don't know why my hand is still swiping. In the digital realm, it's a little bit different because that same interaction where I enter the app and talk to friends and ask them about their exciting plans, and they actually know what FOMO is just the beginning. And this is usually denoted in the app by the endless stream of updates. So the notification immediately after that is another update, and then another, and then another, and then another. And then I'm a little bit hazy after that, and then you get to your FOMO. And this is where those real digital differences really take shape, or should I say, size. Because there's one key rule on the whole: digital interactions tend to be more frequent than their real-life counterparts. And the reason for this, as we all know, is that social media marginally outconnects reality. But it's also because social media is about a 40th the size of your actual social circle. And so we just sort of cram things in fact, awkwardly. A tiny digital interaction was where I first met my FOMO, and it was in a notification about the size of this studio, which surprisingly, given that I am often dubbed social media's finest digital import, is not that big. And at the best of times, I don't like being in close proximity to FOMO, for being squashed in an app with my future. Anxiety was the second most horrifying experience of my life. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Sarah, what was the first? Being squashed in the elevator with real people on the way up. But the next time we met in a real-life social situation, we sure did have a chuckle. At least I think we did. I couldn't hear them because they were on the other side of the room. You see, real-life social interactions, like cars or portion sizes, or America itself, are just bigger. I mean, they'd have to be, right? Especially given what we've discovered on this channel about the differences in social circle sizes. And of course, a social circle is not the only place in real life where you'd interact. In addition to friends, family, and in desperate times, colleagues, which should prompt nobody to ask me about the office party incident of 2018, there is also the wider world. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, Sarah, the real world has separate spaces for work and play. Well, firstly, that's not always true. And secondly, that's not where I was going with this. I was actually going to mention the engagement level because, while in real life, the social interaction and the level of engagement are more or less balanced with each other, this is often not the case in social media. To go from scrolling to engaging, you often have to kind of step up, because the level of engagement is higher up than just passive scrolling. There's one thing to remember this: getting in, but getting out. When your emotions are high and your FOMO is strong, it could lead to an unintentionally hilarious TikTok video. In fact, I do have footage, but I can't show it on here because I'd get hundreds of complaints and an equal number of friend requests. So just take my word for it. FOMO is of course found in many places and through much of our daily lives, but never more do I need to address it than when I'm on social media. So because of this, it is worth remembering some of the key differences between real-life FOMO and social media FOMO. Don't take my word for it. Instead, listen to me from last year. It was once said by me in just a second from now that you can tell a lot about a society by the size of its FOMO. And given its unparalleled record of boasting larger stuff than everyone else, social media might fancy its chances of winning the Maya FOMO's bigger than your FOMO debate. But the truth is, and you might find this shocking, real-life FOMO is larger. You can't talk about FOMO without talking about triggers. Triggers are the provoking events or situations that keep the FOMO attached to our psyche like a docked plane. And the only reason I made an aviation sim there was to draw your attention to the miniature control tower I made from real-life and digital FOMO triggers while I was bored. Anyway, there are several key differences in this department. On real-life FOMO, the triggers are ever so slightly less frequent and crucially less intense. This makes them manageable and possible to overcome. How do I know that? Because I was 14 once. But whereas real-life FOMO, that is type R FOMO, is decidedly multifaceted, that's not always the case in social media. Sure, type S FOMO, the ones whose triggers look like surprised ghosts, definitely do have multiple facets. But type D FOMO, which is icily the more outgoing and competitive of the two, is often one-dimensional due to the manner in which each platform feeds the content into the feed. There's also a difference in how they affect our daily lives. In real life, the FOMO hangs vertically from our consciousness, thus making it harder to yank from our minds by pulling the reality cable. And the horizontal connection of social media FOMO means that you can do this in theory, but it's not recommended. One of the biggest concerns for people experiencing FOMO, aside from being forced to eat mushy peas, is the great real-digital FOMO divide. In real life, FOMO is categorized as manageable, while it's generally overwhelming in social media. Moreover, real-life FOMO operates on a 50% frequency and social media on 60%. What does all of this mean? Well, let's just say that you want to use your real-life coping mechanisms in social media, but they don't run on the same frequency, are not dual-purpose, or are incompatible with the digital world. In that instance, you'll need to run to therapy station to pick up some coping strategies. A coping strategy will convert the FOMO from overwhelming to the manageable level of your real life. In the event that your coping strategy doesn't come with a Type R FOMO adapter, be sure to also pick up one of these. This FOMO adapter is magic. It allows you to turn your Type S or D FOMO into a Type R real-life FOMO. For people experiencing FOMO in real life, the same applies, but in reverse. I'd say the most obvious difference between real life and social media FOMO is the intensity. When I first experienced FOMO on social media, I couldn't believe how intense it was, and not in a Morgan Freeman type way. I mean, this was a Twitter feed, I just mean it was overwhelming, but in real life. You don't usually have that problem and/or luxury, because a significant amount of real life. FOMO is either not as intense or not as frequent. This is a particular problem when you're squished in one with your future anxiety. As with many areas of life, FOMO is its own subgenre of real versus digital word differences. Take, for instance, the name that we assign to that helpful coping mechanism that helps you with your FOMO. When you're scrolling or interacting, in real life and much of the rest of the world, this is known as a social support. This is the word we use for what social media might call a digital detox or a mindfulness practice. Also, whether it's situated in the real or the digital world, people also can't agree on what you call that area of life that you enter. Upon entering real life, we usually opt for the word society. Please note that digital natives, just like patrons on my most recent secret stream, are divided on whether this should be pronounced society or society. Either way, social media users will often call this area the feed. More often than not, real-life interactions will call a FOMO trigger an event. Social media will call an event a post. While social media has about 100 words for a notification, chief among these are ping, alert, message, update, or push notification. And finally, JOMO, this is something I've encountered far more in real life than I have on social media. This is a coping mechanism offered in therapy, in which you pay attention to the joy of missing out, but the use of JOMO might be confusing to some social media addicts. You might think of JOMO, often pronounced Jomo, as a male servant, a fine example of which is the character of Jeeves from P.G. Wodehouse's Jeeves and Wooster novels that I somehow keep mentioning in my videos just by coincidence. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below some of the FOMO differences that you've encountered. I'm Sarah Brown. You can follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. Thank you to my patrons for literally making this video happen. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Till the next video, goodbye.